All right. I think we're live. Let me know in the comments if anybody's watching, if you can hear me. I wanted to go over a couple videos I saw recently, congressional hearings, specifically in regards to military recruiting. Now, if you're not worried about military recruiting, even if you're not in the military, it's a very big deal for a number of different reasons. Number one, we're an all volunteer force. If we were to reverse that, um, and go to a draft, which, in wartime that might happen. Um, what might people think um, of these wars that we are fighting overseas? But specifically, there was a recruiting problem from 2020 to now. So in 2019, we hit the numbers. So something happened in 2020. Who has to guess what it is? That all of a sudden there was some issues with recruiting. Now they're blaming the pandemic. They're blaming, people have drug problems, people on Adderall, all these things, which are all true. But that was true in 2020 as well. And I think, what's up, All Nighter Hunter? Let me know if you can hear me. I'm here. We can start now. Excellent. Make sure you guys drop your questions. If I like to go over a couple of videos before, see if anybody comes in. If you guys have any questions for me on any of the videos I've covered this week, drop them in the description, and then I'll get to them as soon as I'm done covering this initial topic. So when I'm talking about recruiting, I think this is my take, my personal take. There has been a push to put things on a pedestal that aren't supporting and defending the Constitution, as well as there's been a moral injury to people that fought in Iraq and Afghanistan. And what that moral injury is they were told one thing and they were actually doing something else, the reason they were over there. And a lot of military service members are telling their story to their family members, and therefore their family members are not joining. So let's take a look at this video here. This is kind of got me emotional, but it is kind of interesting what this retired lieutenant colonel says about our withdrawal from Afghanistan. And to be honest with you, this is one of the main reasons, in my opinion, that we are having a recruiting problem.
I recognize Lieutenant Colonel Mann for his opening statement.
Chairman McCall, Ranking Member Meeks, committee members, thank you for this opportunity to testify before you today. I'm here to relive August 2021 with all of you, not as a Democrat or as a Republican, but as an American combat veteran that's going to do my best to represent over 800,000 Afghanistan war veterans and their families, but with my own point of view. I'm a Green Beret and a retired lieutenant colonel with nearly 23 years in service and 3 combat tours in Afghanistan. I'd like to start with a question. What does an American promise mean today? There's a promise in the military that is both explicit and implicit. I have your back. We were trained that way. It's in our blood. But in August 2021, the leaders who held us to that standard went silent while our Afghan allies were left behind. The U.S. government may not have had the backs of our Afghan allies, but our veterans did. For as long as we've been a nation, our veterans have been a moral compass for doing the right thing, especially in hard times. As we try to figure out where to go from here, I suspect we're going to need that moral compass more than ever. You won't find many veterans sitting out here today who relish being involved in this Afghan evacuation. We paid our dues and we tried to move on with our lives. I know jumping back into the quagmire of Afghanistan was certainly not part of my military retirement plan. But like thousands of other veterans across the country watching Kabul collapse on August 15, 2021, I received a phone call from a friend that absolutely crushed me. "I'm not afraid to die," he said to me. "I just don't want to die alone." Those were the words that dragged me back into the Afghanistan conflict. His name was Sergeant First Class Nizamuddin Nizami, but I just called him Nizam. His father was a Mujahideen fighter who was killed by the Soviets when he was 4 months old. He had no money, no family, no hope. Yet somehow he became an Afghan commando, one of the elite warriors who were trained by U.S. Special Operations to do really 95% of the fighting in the country. Green Berets, including me, who worked with Nizam, we loved him like a brother. He volunteered for every mission, every day. He was family. But despite numerous inquiries to the State Department, Congress, and even Army Special Operations Headquarters about his SIV status, Kabul was falling and no one was coming to help him. This was a guy who was shot through the face protecting U.S. Green Berets from a Taliban ambush. And for me, he was the same guy that even while he was being hunted and texted by the Taliban would call me to ask how my kids were doing. Over the next few weeks, I assembled a small team of volunteers, mostly veterans from across the country, that we called Task Force Pineapple, to guide Nizam and hundreds more to safety. We didn't have any resources or battlefield access or time, but we had something that a lot of people didn't: relationships and trust. We used cell phones, knowledge of the terrain, and an encrypted chat room to guide at-risk commandos and their families at night, navigating through that suffocating crowd through an open sewage canal, and then into position to link up with known NATO service members like Aiden, who were standing watch near a 4-foot hole in the perimeter fence. Pineapple wasn't the only group. There were hundreds of ad hoc volunteer groups doing similar work, many of them sitting out here today. From breakfast tables to basements across the world. Jane, a Gold Star wife who lost her husband, Chris, in Afghanistan. Will, a double amputee, fighting to save the interpreter who saved his life on the battlefield. And dozens, even hundreds more. We helped hundreds of allies, but thousands were left behind, and at great cost to this vulnerable veteran population who had already given so much. My buddy, Steve, who was racked with post-traumatic stress and a traumatic brain injury from an IED, screamed into his pillow and pounded his bed because his children were in the next room. As his former interpreter was detained at a Taliban checkpoint and was pleading over the phone, "Steve, they are beating my wife. My children are watching this, for God's sakes. What should I do? Can I fight them? Why is this happening?" Jay, a former Navy SEAL in Pineapple, received a text on Signal from his Afghan partner. "My daughter has been trampled, sir. I know we're going to miss our chance to escape, but she's unconscious and barely breathing." It's okay, my friend. Thank you for trying. This whole thing has been a gutting experience. I never imagined I would witness the kind of gross abandonment, followed by career-preserving silence of senior leaders, military and civilian. As a result of the way that we've left Afghanistan, we're on the front end of a national security crisis, as 27 violent extremist groups are now operating on former NATO security bases with Taliban top cover. And I think we're on the front end of a mental health tsunami, as 73% of our Afghan war veterans say they feel betrayed by how this war ended. Calls to the VA hotline have spiked 81% in the first year since the Afghan withdrawal, and they keep coming. My friend Brad was found dead a few months ago in a Mississippi hotel room. His wife, Dana, confirmed to me that the Afghan abandonment reactivated all the demons that he had managed to put behind him from our time in Afghanistan together. And he just couldn't find his way out of the darkness of that moral injury. America is building a nasty reputation for multi-generational systemic abandonment of our allies that we leave as smoldering human wreckage, from the Montagnards of Vietnam to the Kurds in Syria. Our veterans know something else that this committee might do well to consider. We might be done with Afghanistan, but it's not done with us. The enemy has a vote. If we don't set politics aside and pursue accountability and lessons learned to address this grievous moral injury on our military community and right the wrongs that have been inflicted on our most at-risk Afghan allies, this colossal foreign policy failure will follow us home and ultimately draw us right back into the graveyard of empires where it all started. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
So obviously, I want to play that because it is, number one, kind of emotional, and number two, I think it highlights what a lot of nations are thinking about the United States, is our track record. You could say we stand for, and I heard this during the TikTok hearings the other day. Politicians are like, "This is America. We stand for, rule of law and openness, and we don't hide things and all this kind of stuff." It's like, what are you talking about? And really, a lot of people are saying the reason they want to get TikTok out of here is because they don't have control. They don't have a backdoor to see what's going on like they do with Facebook and Twitter. But if there's other nations like Saudi Arabia, I see a lot of you commenting about the petrodollar, that see us abandon other nations and lie to them. What would you do in that situation? All right, let's get to your comments. I see got about 6 people watching. Thanks for tuning in tonight. Looks like we got All Nighter Hider. What's up, dude? I'm here. We can start now. Good. All right, from the Confused Philosopher. How would the U.S. government ever draft young people today, especially the woke Marxists who think America is a terrorist state? That's what I wondered too. This happened in the 70s too. I've done videos on this. Have you ever heard of McNamara's morons? They drafted mentally handicapped people. Yeah, we did that. And they let, some of the liberal college students, because they didn't want people, all the young people in the United States to not go to college. So you can get out of the draft by going to school and all this kind of stuff. But most Americans, most young people in the military today, they're being preached this stuff too. When it comes to critical race theory, diversity, equity, and inclusion, which has nothing to do with diversity. They're getting preached this stuff and they're leaving. Or they're seeing what we did and how we lied to our allies, and they don't want to be part of it. All right, Little Dipper. I don't know. Okay, so what news dropped within the last few hours that has dozens of YouTubers uploading the end of the petrodollar videos? Did some other news I didn't see drop? Okay, so the only thing that I saw today was CNN and Fox News, so mainstream media, is talking about the end of the petrodollar. So I kind of follow George Gammon's take on this, and he said, look at the demand for dollars, look at the discount window, look at swap lines to Europe, and those swap lines are at the Fed funds rate right now, and they're going up, meaning they need more dollars. And the reason they need these dollars is because they have dollar-denominated debt. So until that dollar-denominated debt goes away, you cannot just shut off the petrodollar system overnight. So that's what I would imagine people are talking about, is because the mainstream media is covering it all of a sudden. You got to wonder why the mainstream media is covering it. You know what I mean? Because I think those stories are vetted, the mainstream media. I've got like a dozen notifications of the death of the petrodollar in the last 3 hours or less from different YouTubers. Yeah, that's the only thing I can think. There could be something going on that I'm unaware of, though. Yo, YouTube notifications for the fail again. Oh, they didn't notify you? By the way, that's why I haven't been able to monetize yet, because I've been been punished for saying things I shouldn't say. Which, by the way, I have a Rumble channel as well. But my dad was in Vietnam. He won't talk about it. That's why I never signed up, though I wanted to. Yeah, it's I've been in for 15 years, and a question I ask a lot of people is, has your military service made you more or less patriotic? Which is not a question a lot of people want to answer, but I would say, in my experience, majority of people in the military are great people. They actually signed up for defending the Constitution of the United States. Although that's what makes some of them less patriotic, is they realize that's not what the military is all about. A lot of the people are about that, but the organization, right, the politicians, we've been lied to enough where you're like, hey, not sure I'm trusting your motives here. Yeah, typical YouTube, not letting people know I'm going live. Standard. By the way, I think companies like YouTube We're going to start to lose market share. And that's why it's good for companies like Rumble, even things that are not profitable, green energy, DEI, all this stuff that what companies are taking on that's more expense and during a recession. These smaller companies that are nimble, these bigger ones that are authoritarian types, going to lose market share. I think you nailed it in your videos. Shitty pay, woke agenda. Yeah, that's why people won't join the military. The pay is, some people say it's decent. It's not horrible, but the quality of life, like it is a active service. Like if you come into the military, you are saying, I'm giving up stability for this. And this is supporting and defending the Constitution. Now, what if that idea doesn't exist in the military? Then you're going to have real retention problems. Lack of confidence, and plain laziness. Yeah. And they're lowering standards, by the way, in the military. And the way you figure out if the military is going in the wrong direction is they lose a war, which is sad. You see little signs of it here and there, but the public don't know. And then all of a sudden they're like, well, I always known the American military is the most powerful in the world and they can destroy it. And then all of a sudden, one of our fighters gets shot down, or we lose a war, which, by the way, I think is going to happen. Like at least our backing of a war, that's going to happen probably this summer, and we're going to have to tuck our tails and be like, hey, yeah, actually, Ukraine's losing. Zelensky just came out today and said they're out of ammo. And by the way, they're Britain's shipping them depleted uranium rounds. Okay. It's wild. It's being escalated, and from our side, we have said it is not okay if Ukraine loses. That is not an acceptable outcome. Without NATO troops on the ground, Ukraine's going to lose. My take. So we either have to walk that back and say, yeah, it's an acceptable outcome, or NATO has to get involved. God forbid. But that's another example of how does this have to do with the Constitution of the United States? How does it have to do with supporting and defending Americans? And anyone who says, well, it's close to Europe and all this kind of cool. There are wars going on in Libya right now. Why aren't we involved there? No one really has an answer. Okay. No one wants to go bleed in some hellhole just saying, yeah. I mean, most people don't want to die, but why did people sign up after 9/11? And is that spirit in America gone? There are still, people that want to fight for America. You saw that video of that gentleman, that lieutenant colonel. He has cojones. He, number one, fought over there, and he has a conscience, right? So he did the right thing, even though the United States was not doing the right thing at the time. There's a lot of people like that in the military still. And there's a lot of people like that in America. They just think that the military will send them to do the wrong thing, not the right thing. A lot of people right now. Yeah, no problem. There's another video out there of diversity, equity, and inclusion. I was going to show it. I'll maybe show it later, but it's fascinating. It is fascinating, and like what's going on in the military. And I could tell you stories for days, but let's just say there are people in charge, and then down the ranks that want to protect the system and not the Constitution. That's what I'll say. Afghanistan is a graveyard of empires. That's correct. I actually, when I was over there, I was staying in a Russian building. Yeah, like from the 80s. And it's amazing. They left them. It's funny because they left a bunch of stuff over there too, just like we did. And the British were over there. It's such mountainous terrain. It's actually very beautiful. A lot of people don't know this, but in the 1970s, Afghanistan was a tourist destination. Like people would go there to ski. Unbelievable. They're more advanced. And then I saw this the other day too. Like the Taliban is not great. That's not hot take here. But apparently it is safer today in Kabul. I saw this from Peak Prosperity channel. It's safer today in Kabul than it is in Baltimore. Pretty wild stuff. I don't know how true that is, but I do trust that guy, Chris Martinson. He's great. So, yeah, no one wants to bleed for Ukraine either. If they were a NATO ally, you would say, which is, by the way, why Russia invaded. But it's just hard. It's hard to wrap your head around like what we're doing over there, why we're spending all this money, and what success looks like. And I've said this before. There's probably a common theme throughout every foreign intervention we've had recently is what does victory look like? And no one can answer that question. Afghanistan, no one knew what it looked like. So they saw the trajectory of why we were there for 20 years. And I said, okay, makes sense. We're here to do empire building or whatever the heck we're doing. So we'll be here for 200 years then, right? Nope. So if we're there to kill terrorists, most powerful military in the world doesn't need to be there for 20 years. They will conscript potentially. Dude, it would be a wild. I just think about. I did a video on. Put it up on YouTube Shorts too, on what recruiting would be like or conscription would be like in the United States or drafting people. It would be a mess. It would be a massive issue. Just because we don't have people that are in shape, that are young. The majority of prescription drugs right here in the United States, that's young people are taking them. And I think you'd have a lot of people deserting. Especially if we were going to war over like computer chips or something like that. Yeah, that could be a reason. I tend to think the southern border is open for a lot of reasons, but easy votes. A lot. Politicians kind of disgusting, as we all know. But I always thought, politicians were corrupt and all that stuff. But when it came to brass tacks, like people dying, they cared about this country. I definitely doubt that now. Fentanyl crisis because of the open border. And by the way, think like a bad guy. If you were Russia or China, there's so many Achilles heels that the United States has right now. Open border is one of them. That you can just ship in poison like fentanyl, and a lot of young people are dying off because of it. I think it's the leading cause of people in their 20s dying is overdosing on fentanyl or dosing on fentanyl at all. Yes, it was a Russian graveyard at one point. Yeah, the history of Afghanistan, if you've never looked into it, is quite interesting. They're good fighters, number one. And the people in Afghanistan, that's the other thing. They don't really think of themselves as a country. They think of themselves as like different tribes. They don't really recognize borders and all this kind of stuff. They're very tribalistic people. So it's not like they're like, oh, okay, if it's Afghanistan versus the United States, that's not how they think. Open border, yeah. Sign up for the front and get citizenship, or back you go. Yeah, potentially. We'd have to have understanding of who's who in the zoo and how many people are in the United States and how many of them are military age males and all this kind of stuff. So I don't know if we have a grasp on that with illegal immigration. Yeah, I don't. By the way, I don't think that that's a bad thing, like joining the military to get citizenship. I don't think that's a bad thing. Obviously, if they're using it like that, I think it is. The Romans did it. As the empire fell, it offered land and citizenships to the Goths and Vandals. Didn't work out so well in the long term. Yeah, if you're conscripting people who are kind of militia minded, like soldier for hire kind of thing, they don't understand the cause and why they're fighting. Morale is very huge in the military because trying to force people into a fight that they don't want to go into, how well do you think that's going to go against a foe that wants to be there, that's fighting for their national identity or whatever they're fighting for? It doesn't go well. Yes, correct. It is sick. Bad Starship Trooper joke. That's above my head. Starship Trooper. I don't watch that. Let's see here. Yeah, Idiocracy. I saw that movie for the first time like a couple years ago. I was like, oh my gosh, it's like a documentary now. Wow, CNBC is talking about this. Are you talking about the petrodollar? That is what. So the fact that CNN, Fox News, and maybe CNBC coming out at the same time and talking about the petrodollar. Is there like a meeting somewhere where they're like, okay, the thing to talk about today, because it didn't like come out all of a sudden. This has been a story that if you've been watching this channel or any economic channel, we've been talking about it for a year. So what changed? What changed today? Did they get a memo to try to tell people, hey, guess what? Got to get people on in this like wartime mindset to understand like why we would go to war with China. I don't know. But it is weird that different networks, different sides of the political aisle, talk about it at the same time. Propaganda is rampant. Yes, it is. I think I talked about this last live stream, but check out World War II in Color on Netflix. Specifically, there's an episode about Hitler and propaganda. Goebbels, I want to say, was his propaganda minister. Eerie stuff. All right, from the confused philosopher, Eric, you said a while ago that you didn't think we would hyperinflate. Have the recent banking crisis caused you to revise that assessment? So I think we need to define terms. Hyperinflation, I think, is 50% a month. I don't think that's going to happen until I think you will see it in Europe. I think you will see it in developing nations first, like South America, certain nations in Africa. They will, if they have dollar-based debt, they will collapse way before the United States. Same with Canada. So as those countries go, we will be the last domino to fall, in my opinion, if they have dollar-based debt. Because again, you cannot just turn off the petrodollar and say, hey, all this, you can, I mean, technically, and say, but they have this debt in dollars. So they still need dollars. Therefore, they still save in treasuries. So all these countries, when their currency is failing, when you look at the DXY, dollars just based off other currencies, they go to the next best thing. And usually that is the dollar. Even though it's crappy, to us, it's better than like the peso or the real or whatever they're using. So I don't think we're going to see hyperinflation. So my base case is I think we're going to see systemic inflation, 5 to 20% this decade. You're going to see more social unrest because people are getting pissed and they don't always know why. But if you pay attention to like the undercurrent of what people are talking about, it all has to do with money. Rent crisis, people can't have kids, meaning in life is going away, but all these things are happening. But it all kind of has to do with the dollar and not being able to afford life because everything's inflating. So I think that will continue, and they'll keep changing the CPI. Right? It'll be like, well, technically we're 5%, but if you follow shadow stats, you'll see it's like 20 because they have to lie to you. But that lie can only go so far. Because when you go to Walmart or Target and if you were to interview people walking in and be like, hey, great news, inflation's down to 5%. they'd be like, what the hell are you talking about? I'm spending 20% more on this, 40% more on this. CPI is not even in their consciousness. They understand how much more they're spending than they did last year. All that to say, I don't think hyperinflation is coming to the United States this decade. The money has to go, and I could change my stance on that if we have UBI, if these banks start to fail and they start nationalizing banks and all this kind of stuff. But I just don't think that's going to happen very quickly. And it's closer when these other currencies start to fail, specifically the EU. What is cryptocurrency? Is it a currency? Your thoughts about what it is? I think cryptocurrency is code. It's like a software. Cryptology allows for security, though. Unlike a database, like I kind of put Bitcoin in a category and crypto in another category. Cryptocurrency, or the blockchain, specifically is used and can be used for security and verification. It is actually slower than a centralized database. So why would you use the blockchain unless you want security? What would you want security for? Voting, currencies, ID verification potentially. But Bitcoin specifically, why people like it, including myself, it's distributed ledger, meaning that it is a ledger on the blockchain. And who owns that ledger system? It is distributed amongst millions of computers. So you cannot go, there's no CEO of Bitcoin. So you cannot go to one person and say, shut this down. You can't do it. So it has rules that are outside of you and me. Fixed supply of 21 million. And it's very easy to send, yada, yada, yada. Is it the future? Do I think governments will adopt it? I think people will. What is it? I can't remember the rule, but good money chases out bad money. So just like if you're in Turkey and you're using the lira and you're like, you know what, this is some BS, or you're in Argentina and you're like, as soon as I get paid, I need to go trade for dollars immediately. That's what they do, by the way. In Turkey and in Argentina, any place that they have inflation, they trade it for a better currency. Now, what do people in the United States do? Because the dollar is the best currency in the world, but it won't be around forever. What do we do? And then the government's going to come in and tell you, hey, you know what? And this is what has happened every time, by the way, with inflation. They have to come in with something trusted, because once you get into inflation, hyperinflation, people say, anything you say, government, anything you come out with that's another currency, I don't trust you. So it has to be gold-backed, silver. It has to be not backed by the government. So will the United States do that? I don't know. But that's why people love cryptocurrency. I'm a huge fan of Bitcoin. Go down the Bitcoin rabbit hole. I've yet to meet a lot of people that truly understand it and hate it. It is not a panacea. I don't think it is a panacea, but it fixes a lot of incentives, in my humble opinion. Confused Philosopher, love your channel, by the way. Dude, thanks a bunch. Or ma'am, don't know who you are, but I appreciate that. It means a lot. It's a passion project. I enjoy it. What's up, Pete the Sasquatch? Pie War. My brothers were Marines and now have no idea what they were fighting for. And one has terrible PTSD. I'm sick of them destroying the world and using the American families to do it. Me and you both. In fact, one of the things I want to do after I retire, I've been in for 15 years in the military, is work with veterans. They're one of the greatest communities. And this moral, if you've ever heard of a moral injury, that is one. It's when you don't realize that you were doing something that was evil. Because one man's freedom fighter and another man is another man's terrorist, right? Americans, especially in Afghanistan and Iraq, thought they were doing something good. And to a certain degree, in Afghanistan, you could say they were. Hard to say about Iraq. But the nature of the military is you follow orders. You can't just go up to your commanding officer and like, Hey, sir, are we sure there's weapons of mass destruction over here? You trust the intel. You trust the intel. So that creates some massive moral injury. When you come home and you realize, wait a second, I wasn't the good guy they were telling me I was. I wasn't fighting for Americans' freedom and protection and all this kind of stuff. I was fighting for something different. It's rough. Well, that shouldn't be a question. I don't know what you're referring to. I'm looking forward to Sweet Home San Diego in about 2 weeks. Have been a fun paid vacation here. San Diego's dope. I had a 2-week military trip down there in Chula Vista. It was a good time. Stayed in Pacific Beach. It was awesome. Well typed by War. Agreed. It is sad. I think veterans, I talk to them a lot. Obviously, I'm soon to be a veteran. I guess you can call me one, still in. But I know why there's a recruiting crisis. I do. I know why people don't want to join. I know why people want to get out. And none of the solutions on Washington are going to address it. In fact, they're going to probably make it worse. So, yeah, just wait. You'll probably see headlines next year. The worst recruiting crisis since last year, which at the end of the day is a national security problem. Do you think Iran will try and open up another front for World War III, Syria maybe? What are we doing in Syria? I don't know. I don't. It's one of those things. I think it has to do with oil, but I can tell you, at the beginning, there's a lot of countries. When I showed that video, a lot of countries are sick and tired of the bullshit that America's selling. This, hey, we're here to liberate you and free the shit out of you. It's like they don't buy it anymore. Okay, so they see us in Syria, and then they see us virtue signaling about Ukraine, and they're like, what the? And then they see us pull out of Afghanistan. They see us leave men behind. And they go, hey, wait a minute. I don't know if I'm tied to the right horse here. Do I think Iran will do that? Not without Russia and China. But if you saw the other day, and this is one of the most massive things in the last 2 decades. Iran, Saudi Arabia signed a peace deal brokered by China. That is massive. If you understand how the Middle East works, they aren't friends, haven't been for a long time. And it appears as if they have a mutual enemy now. Not good. Shooting ourselves in the foot. Let's see here. Yes, should be a question and important to know, as this will tell us the fate of crypto. You're talking about what cryptocurrency is, yeah. Okay, if crypto is indeed a currency, it won't stand if it is a security. Maybe it has a place. So the SEC has come out and said Bitcoin is a commodity. And what do they use? The Howey test. Most cryptos have a central issuer. Therefore, they're securities. For the Wild West, it's very hard to come up with. It's kind of like making laws on drugs. They just change the chemical compound just a little bit, and then all of a sudden it's legal. It's kind of hard to do that. It's kind of the same thing when it comes to cryptocurrencies. So SEC is trying to make a buck off of it, trying to write laws, all this kind of stuff. But they have come out and said Bitcoin is a commodity, and it's different than all other cryptos. So that should tell you something. I think Bitcoin can be used as a savings technology. So it might not be a currency, but it might be used to save in by sovereigns. because one thing that sovereigns have a hard time with is trusting other people. Okay. So that's why the dollar was the world reserve currency, because it was trusted, because it was backed by gold. Not so trusted anymore. Shouldn't be a question in an ethical world. Let me know when you find an ethical world. Yeah, that's one of the great things about that I like about Bitcoin is no one can change the rules, especially people who are powerful and rich. Let me know your reasoning behind the question. Arc Silver, Eric, can you tell me why we're in Ukraine, not in other countries, and not in other countries' wars right now? Whoever rules Eastern Europe will rule the heartland. Whoever rules the heartland will rule the world island. I don't know what the world island is, but my take on why we're in Ukraine has to do with the dollar. Russia, Putin, Xi, China have said, and they're correct, that the dollar is oppressive. So, Putin's not dumb. He was the head of KGB. So he knew that we were going to freeze his foreign assets and all this kind of stuff. But he also knew that between little flimsy pieces of paper and energy, who wins that battle? Who needs who more? People need the energy more. Russia, biggest exporter of energy in the world. And who's hurting more from this war? Europe or Russia? There's a lot of propaganda about Russia, but look at the ruble compared to the euro. Not good. And the appetite in Europe, by the way, is shrinking to support Ukraine, especially if you can't tell people what success looks like. Because if you say success is Putin going, see you later, my bad, that's not happening. That's not happening. So, what does success look like? Yeah, not good. It looks like escalation, if they're to be correct. Whoever rules the world island will rule the world. I don't know what the world island is. Let me know what that is. I think you mean wars are monetary. Yes, correct. Putin's not invading Ukraine for monetary reasons, but I think he did it like he wanted to do it because we kept poking the bear. But I think he was able to do it understanding the fiscal position, the monetary position that the United States and Europe is in. So, if it's indeed a currency, it won't exist for much longer. States have monopoly and army that backs the monopoly on currencies. Yes. So, do you think? So this is a good point, little dipper. Do you think the government could shut down the internet? Potentially they could. But does that come at a cost to the government? The answer is yes. So if there's internet, there will be cryptocurrency. There will be Bitcoin. So it's an idea. It's a software. America tried to kind of control the internet. It's impossible. It's also impossible to control cryptocurrencies. So at the same time, you got to look at game theory. Other nations, if you ban it, by the way, China's bringing it back on shore because they tried to ban it and they realized, oh, well, wait a second. Maybe we want some of this stuff. So if you try to ban it, excuse me, if you try to ban it, other countries will look at that opportunity. I saw a poster from El Salvador, and Bukele is their leader over there. It's a poster that's like looks like America from the 1950s, and it's like the new land of opportunity. And it's saying all these laws that they have, like lower taxes, yada yada yada, which is what America used to stand for. And so, if you outlaw things in your country, you can have capital flight. So the more you outlaw things, the more you have to control people. So they'll just leave. I don't agree with you that, or I agree with you that they could fight it. It's a lot harder than people think. Ukraine is about who supplies Germany with power for the next century. From our perspective, potentially, but the other thing you need to think about is, or one of the questions I always ask myself is, okay, so NATO exists because USSR, but we're paying for it, and Germany's getting their oil or their energy from this. Doesn't make any sense. Who's signing off on this? Doesn't make any sense. The whole thing doesn't make a lot of sense. And then you have the corruption of Ukraine. State Department in February of 2022 rather, on their website said, Ukraine, do not do business with them. They are corrupt. Don't visit them, blah, 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 blah. And then all of a sudden they're freedom fighters, right? Not saying they're not brave, not saying they're not fighting valiantly and all that kind of stuff, but you can be two things at once, right? The country and the politicians can be very corrupt, and they are. So, and there's some ties to Americans with the corruption, as you well know. M&J, what's up? Good to have you. Colorado Luke, are there many examples of military doing the right thing? It's a great question. War is, you can, revisionist history always, who was it? Norm Macdonald. He was talking to a stand-up. He's like, you know what I learned in history class? Everyone who wins a war is the good guy. It says so right here in this book, and he's holding up a history book. So yeah, winners write history, right? So, I don't know if you've heard about, different theories about World War II, if America hadn't gotten involved and all this kind of stuff. Vietnam, Iraq, Yemen, all these things that we've done. In general, military should be defensive, in my opinion. Some people think military shouldn't even exist, but if you have resources, I think human nature is they'll take you over. But yeah, is there many examples of military doing the right thing? In certain circumstances, yes. D-Day would be an example of people doing the brave thing. I've seen people do the right thing in the military multiple times, but any big, massive organization like the military is going to, and then especially since you're under the UCMJ, so you're legally bound to follow orders, there's going to be different motivations other than patriotic ones for certain people, unfortunately. But I think America is rare in that they have fought some wars that didn't involve conquering and looting people's stuff. And it was for liberation purposes only. You could read into that and say, no, it's actually about oil and resources, maybe. But there have been some things that America's done that was about liberating people. It wasn't about taking their stuff. This thesis became known as the Heartland Theory. I'm not following you on that Heartland Theory. I'll have to look that up. Victory is defined as the preservation of the Dollar Reserve System. Yes, I agree. I follow the dollar milkshake theory. Makes a pretty convincing case that the dollar will be last to fail. These things happen slower than most people think. Unless government is printing money and handing it to individuals, UBI. It's hard to get hyperinflation. Doesn't mean you don't have inflation, but hard to get hyperinflation. In 1991, federal judge's oath of office was changed to exclude the Constitution, not even mentioned anymore. I've wondered if they're going to do that for the military, by the way, because we don't swear an oath to the president. We swear an oath to support and defend the Constitution. It's a pesky document that keeps tyrannical politicians up at night. Russia has changed its stripes. By the way, I didn't know that about federal judges. I have to look into that. Changed its stripes. If they do the same thing they did in the early 1900s, then we must stop them. You're talking about USSR, Russia? I don't think Russia's expansionary. If you look at Russia's foreign policy, it's mostly been defensive. I'm not saying they're good people, but Do we have a leg to stand on when we're like, hey, Russia, you're not allowed to invade other countries? Meanwhile, we're lying to them and expanding NATO, which we said we wouldn't do. I don't think we have a leg to stand on. Can you say push back on that? Important labor from southern border. Yes, I definitely think that's, by the way, part of it. Part of our demographics is part of the reason that they want an open border. Which, by the way, I'm one of those people that's like, hey, either you don't have a law that's illegal, and then let people in, because what that does is incentivize things like these guys who come across and sex slavery and all this illegal stuff. Either have it wide open, and anyone can come through, or close it and make it legal to do it in certain locations. But this whole middle ground was illegal, don't come across, just incentivizes illegal activity. I just saw Aunt Cheese meme the other day with the guy asking for a wake up call. Good one, yeah. It was like a guy at a hotel. Can I get a wake up call? And the lady on the other line was like, yes, the Fed's trying to close down banks and be the central point of failure and open up a CBDC. It's kind of funny. Oh, you're talking about petrodollar? Yeah. Trying to follow your conversation here. Have you noticed the number of Walmarts closing in the shitty neighborhoods? What are the consequences of that? Oh, by the way, I saw this story the other day about 2 Walmarts closing in Portland, which I'm going back there this week. It's insane. Like, I should post this video. There in Tampa, there was 200 people. So this is organized crime. 200 people that ran into a Walmart that was closed, broke through the doors, and ransacked the entire place. So organized crime and this kind of like looting mentality. That's why they're closing down in Portland. There's two Walmarts there that are losing more money than they're making because of theft. So, yeah, this stuff happens as people get more desperate, and laws, there's human nature. And the madness of crowds is another one. Like 200 people running into a Walmart. You saw some of the stuff going on down in Florida during spring break. It's crazy. LA Prepper, what's up? I think we got 2 to 3 years if we are lucky. Then hyperinflation, deflation will not be allowed unless you get rid of the small and medium banks. Good point. It's hard to tell. Like, that's one thing I try to be very open about. I don't know, right? You can look at signs, but I don't think you will see hyperinflation in the States before you see it in Europe and in Canada, and before those, it would be like these growing nations like Central America and all that kind of stuff. My take. Even regular inflation year after year hurts. Oh yeah, and you're so I did a video on this the other day. Like, I'm pretty wise with money. I like to think I am. And inflation hurts. It hurts. I notice it, right? And I got a raise this year, and I'm like, damn, like that didn't even cover inflation. Majority of Americans are paycheck to paycheck. Majority of Americans have payments on everything, including their couch. How are they doing it? So I did a video on this the other day. What America's really good at is entrepreneurship when it comes to pulling demand from the future into the present. So, hey, if you have a bad credit score, we'll do the buy now, pay later thing, including on, like, you want to go buy a sandwich from Walmart. You can buy now, pay later on that sandwich. It's insane. So these creative credit systems will continue. And yeah, eventually, as credit tightens, which it is, all the people who are swimming naked, all the people who have all this debt, they have to sell everything they have, or go bust. EP, what's up? M&J. Let's see if we got any other questions. Yeah, Syria. By the way, we're in Syria in the oil areas. By the way, very odd. From Chorpening, what's up? Old seer buddy of mine. How long does the petrodollar have left? As long as people have debt in the U.S. dollar, like big countries like China. If there's less demand for U.S. treasuries, that's how long. Like as the demand for treasuries drops off, meaning China, Russia, Brazil, all these big countries stop saving in dollars, that means the clock is ticking. But as long as they have dollar-based debt, I think the reason they do is because they still use the petrodollar. So that doesn't just turn off overnight. If I were to guess, that transition will take 10 to 15 years, but those small incremental changes will be just, I think the United States will have less and less quality of life because our quality of life is based off exporting inflation because of the petrodollar. Let's see. The U.S. is about to drop several pegs in the world standing, waiting for sanctions. No doubt. Like, people are sick of our crap. And I don't blame them. Syrian conflict is related to the Ukrainian conflict. It's all about the supply of energy to Germany, Russia, or the West. That plays a massive part, for sure. Nord Stream 2 was blown up. Why? All about energy. The Dad Dan, have you heard of the 1996 CIA white paper, How to Make a Mint, and how do you believe they did it? I haven't heard that. I'm writing that down. I could talk for hours about what I think about the CIA. Probably get me flagged, though. The reason behind my question and comment was not aimed at you, it was aimed at All Nighter Hider. Oh, I welcome the questions. If you have, doesn't matter. Like, some people aren't believers in cryptocurrency, and that's totally fine. But I always ask them to kind of pull the curtain back and say, what is money? Why do we agree that this is money versus this? And why can't that be Bitcoin? It could not. Okay, I don't think you need to be all in on one thing or another, but I don't think we're going back to a gold-backed, or at least trading gold coins anytime soon. How will they sell World War III to Americans? Inflation, maybe. Let's see. They will load support for it, they will load support for it unless they have a good excuse. A false one, of course, but they must have a good sale. Yes, I agree. So pain. And that pain has to be caused by the way, I think this is why they're coming out with and declassifying the woohoo flu. Right? Everyone knew it already, but now it's coming from an authoritative source. The war in Ukraine versus Russia is older and recently, and all bad news. Military recruiting is down because people are waking up. The shot, Kazarian fake money and so on. I don't know what half that stuff is. NATO exists to keep Germany in line. Germany is the economy of the EU. If Russia and Germany get right economically, then it's the new Ottoman Empire. China, Russia, Iran, Germany, Turkey. I do 100% agree with you. They do not want Russia and Germany to become BFFs. Do you think Bitcoin has a master key? Do you think it was created by a government entity, very intelligent and high tech? I don't know. Master key, but I guess it could exist, but they're doing an awfully weird job trying to sell it. If it was a government psyop, they're doing an awfully weird job of trying to sell it. They're trying to shut it down. So, I don't necessarily think it comes from the government. I think it became big enough, like it would have been shut down by the government, but it was kind of a sleeper cell. Like it became more and more distributed. Government thought it wouldn't be anything. Then people slowly realized what it was, and it became too distributed for them to shut it down. It goes back to, okay, gotcha. Heartland theory about Germany, and gotcha. Any predictions for France? Does Macron hold the line and bust up the protests, or capitulate and continue spending towards the financial cataclysm. Oh, this is a good one. If you haven't seen what's going on in France, it is like, I mean, they did this in 2010. Apparently, they raised the retirement age from 60 to 62, and now they're raising it from 62 to 64. People are like, not happening. Do I think they're that pissed because of retirement? No. I think it's because they work harder and harder and harder and have less and less to show for it. And they probably pay a ton in taxes. And that all is great until you don't get the benefits. And I think you will see this continue in the West, right? These countries that are living off the labor of others, you're going to see it continue, and people are going to get more and more pissed, and the government's going to try to fix it by printing more money. And there's going to be some politicians like, hey, I'm not a meanie like Macron. I don't want to raise your retirement age. And they're like, yeah, we vote for you. And then inflation comes back. It's just ridiculous. You know, like they did in England too. She was like, you know, we're going to have a tax holiday, and we're going to get manufacturing back here and all this kind of stuff. And we're just going to fund all these tax cuts through selling more bonds. And the market called her bluff, like, nope, not happening. And every single Western country is at the end of the rope when it comes to the financial cliff. So heads they lose, tails they lose, and their citizens just don't know that they're at the end of the road, and there is no solution. So, will he capitulate? I think he's getting a lot of pressure from the EU, so I think he might leave before he capitulates, to be honest with you. Bolshevik revolution, Holodomor, mass murder, etc. They crucified people amongst other anti-human barbaric acts. Yeah, I'm familiar with that. What the USSR did, and Holodomor and Ukraine. Reserve currency will be the last to go. If it goes soon, all other currencies will go with it, especially Western ones. Agreed. SOL. All right, let's see if we got any more questions. Then I'm going to dip out of here. All right. Okay. That'll do it for tonight's live stream. Appreciate you tuning in. Got more questions than usual, so that's always fun. It's always good to interact with you guys. Love hearing your insights and all that. Kind of through line throughout all this, as we are aware, as the government loses control, they typically try to get more totalitarian. So then you're going to get pushback from uninformed voters who are like, hey, stop being totalitarian. You saw that in Israel, by the way, recently. But I think our job, you know, as people who are aware of what's going on, which is a currency collapse, currency crisis, is to inform people and give them hope, because they're going to continue working for these fiat BS dollars. Their life's going to become more miserable, etc. But if you can tell them, hey, here's the problem. Here's what people in Weimar, Germany did. Look at what gold did in Weimar. This isn't to get rich. It's to preserve your labor. It's not to get rich. Not about money. It's preserve your labor. And you get to choose what you preserve your labor in. Anyways, thanks for tuning in, y'all. We'll do this again next Monday, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Peace.